cashier. Pretty much by popular demand, I did transition pictures for Kahlil Gibran, the author of The Prophet, who died in 1931 at the age of 48 of TB-related illnesses, but also, and mainly, of cirrhosis of the liver from years of heavy drinking. He was Lebanese and emigrated to America at the age of 12 and soon became known as a pretty adept artist. He studied in Paris, he painted, I think, something like 700 works, but in 1923, he really hit the jackpot with his book, The Prophet, which is a series of stories, of fables that attempt to shed light on the meaning of life. It's one of the best-selling books ever written and is still in print after all these years. I think I was expecting a placid soul. I think I was expecting a quiet, introverted man. And indeed, if you look at his signature, there are traces in this signature not only of a good intellect, but of somebody who had an outer persona that he showed the world, that was the thing that interacted with the world every day. And then way back from that, he had a core of both wisdom, but also insecurities, problems, worries, anxieties, whatever it was, that were kept very, very well hidden. They were for him alone, and he would be very self-protective. Indeed, the year he brought out The Prophet, he also drew this. And when I went into the energy of this particular picture, it was like struggling through a blizzard. It was as if 10,000 pieces of lint were coming towards me, or cotton candy, were flying in my face. And walking against them was incredibly difficult, a real struggle. Suggesting that what drove this man to plunder the spiritual resources of various religions and so on was a deep need to satisfy gaps in his own soul, to fill those gaps. And the more I went through this blizzard, the harder it became. I've often thought that people who drink excessively or take drugs excessively are running away from something. It's not always the case, but I often think they are. And this was very much indicative of that. He seemed to be running away, and nothing seemed clear or straightforward. What he was able to crystallize and clarify on the page was not necessarily as clear in his own heart. And as I said, from his signature, you can tell that he did present a front to the world. That was the Kahlil Gibran that the world saw. But on the inside, there was a core of longing, of confusion, of hurt, a lot of different stuff going on that nobody else got to see. But of course, that helped him filter all these ideas through his own perceptions, his own pain, his own insecurities. And that's really important for a writer. Also very interesting is that this is the first person I've done, as far as transitions go, where I was given two sets of pictures, completely different. And yet I realized after I'd done the second lot that the first lot helped clarify what the second lot said. Because in the first lot, when I went into his energy, he was descending through smoke of different densities, getting denser and denser the further down he went, and darker and darker. This may relate to how long it took for him to go through the dying process. He physically died, went from form to formless in the space of a day. But the dying process lasted over about 2 years because he became ill, then was diagnosed with cirrhosis, and from there it was a steady decline, which I think is what the first set of pictures were showing. Just got darker and darker and darker. In the second set, it was sunny and bright. He was walking down a little path, but with the spirit, the vim of an explorer. It was a bit like Arnie Sacknewsome in Journey to the Centre of the Earth, looking at clues. Where am I going? Where does this lead? Come on, everybody! He had a real dynamism to his interest in this dying process. It wasn't just, oh, I'm ill and I'm going, this is going to take a bit of a while. This was, hey, let's explore every aspect of this and experience it to the full. And he marched down this path. And there were other paths, and he went down there, imbued with curiosity. Eventually, he came to a gap in the wall, and this is where the darkest part came. This is interesting. I wonder where this goes. And he carried on down and down and down until eventually he came to the symbolic cave that I always see. And he stood there and thought, wow, this is it. And I suspect that that's the exact moment in 1931 when he actually crossed over. But even then, when he got into this cave, this metaphorical cave, he was so eager to gobble it all up. He took it rather like a sumptuous meal where you savor every mouthful. Maybe thinking at a conscious level, I could go back and I could tell people about this. Now I know a lot of answers to questions I had that I didn't know when I was back there. And he continued on down and then arrived at the tunnel. At which point, he simply let himself go. He puffed out his chest and said, I want it all. Give me everything. I want to taste it. I want to eat it. I want to feel it. I want to be it. And that enabled him to rise and float forward. The puzzle here was that if he had a lot of ego concerns and troubles and fears and stuff in his mortal life, where were the obstacles here to his ascension, which most people seem to have when they have attachments to the ego? And when I looked down, there was a very, very shallow maze all the way up the tunnel, etched into the floor. I mean, if you stood on it, it would come up to your ankle bone, probably. It was almost like, yeah, that's what you could be going through if you were down there. But the fact that you submitted, the fact that you are all in with this glorious spiritual experience, the fact that you are throwing yourself on the good graces of the universe, lifts you over these ego puzzles. You're free and clear to rise. And he floated up the tunnel. Feed me. Show me. Teach me. Let me be one with this experience. And when he came to this symbolic dome that I always see of light, which is where we all seem to end up ultimately, he stayed the same way. He hovered in front of it, and when the time came, he simply sank into it as if he were bathing in a warm pool. Yeah. He became one with everything, because there was nothing between him and all that is, and made himself easier to lift. That's what it's all about. The more whole you are when you arrive in this space, the more easily you can be lifted to the higher realms. So this guy who had had all kinds of issues, troubles, concerns, beliefs in his mortal life, when it came to dying, treated it as a full sensory experience, trying to suck the very essence out of every moment. And if we could do the same, from these pictures it would seem that it allows us to avoid some of the challenges that come with attachments to ego and with resistance and so on. And he went into the light, happy, calm. It was almost like he was whole ahead of time, before he was embraced by universal wholeness. As if he acknowledged his perfection at a spiritual level before divine perfection took him in and welcomed him home. That seems to be the way to go. Certainly the most joyful way to go. And that's what I learned from Kahlil Gibran. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.